Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We will be getting started probably about 3 minutes after the hour. I have straight up 10 o'clock on my computer clock. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us, everyone. This is Lloyd Schmeidler with the Community Development Department. We will be getting started in another couple minutes. We'll give people another couple minutes to join us. More than likely, others will come in over the next few minutes as well. We'd invite you to open the chat function and put in what organization you work with, as well as what your job title or work responsibilities might be at your organization. And if you're willing to be on screen, that's great. That's fine too. All right, it is 10:03. We're going to get started, trusting that others will be joining us as we progress. Welcome, everyone. My name again is Lloyd Schmeidler. I am a Senior Community Development Analyst in the City of Durham's Community Development Department and your host for this series. We're grateful to have you join us for the September session of our Effective Case Management in the Homeless Housing System. And we are grateful to have some local experts sharing our session and leading our session this morning. Many times we think experts are always from somewhere else, but we know that there are many people who are skilled and experts in their own right within our community. And this morning we're thrilled to be able to have Rebecca Bourgeois, the lead housing stability case manager at Housing for New Hope on the street outreach team, leading us in a session on motivational interviewing, and then my colleague in community development, Analea Hoberman, Senior Community Development Analyst as well in the Community Development Department, will be talking about active listening. Again, please, as you join, please include in the chat what organization you work with and your position within that organization. And at the end of the session, I'll give you a preview of what's coming up in October. Rebecca, feel free to take it away. I'm going to go on mute. And You're still muted. At least I'm not hearing you.
Hi, Lloyd. I think I'm going to actually get things started.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No worries. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. So as Lloyd mentioned, Rebecca and I are going to be presenting on some sort of, it's going to be kind of a popcorn of skills that we think are useful from active listening and motivational interviewing. Not sure how much experience everyone has with these. Some of you may be very experienced, or so hopefully this will be a nice reminder. Some of you may not have much experience, and if so, this will serve as a great introduction. So a little bit about me. Many of you know me, but we thought, Rebecca and I thought it'd be nice to get to know a little bit about us that people may not know. So I'm originally from Texas, and I did most of my direct services work in DC. Some of you may know, some of you may not know that I primarily served as a victim services provider, working at a domestic violence shelter before I moved to North Carolina. And while I was working as a victim services provider, that's really where I started to feel the need to explore more skills to help me, particularly with trauma escalation and triggered clients. We were seeing a lot of escalation at the organization that we worked at. And, you know, it was a very high pressure environment. I know that's very similar to homeless services. In fact, many of our clients were homeless. You know, there were just so many opportunities for escalation and conflict with providers. And that's what motivated me to go out and seek additional training. And I actually spent a year in sort of a apprenticeship program, being trained in mediation, which got me trained in active listening and de-escalation. And those are skills that I brought back with me to the organization and trained people on. Just wanted to tell y'all a little bit about how I found these skills to be useful. So when I was working at a domestic violence shelter, and I was just starting to learn these active listening skills, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try these out. So I had a client that that basically she was known to use a lot of petty cash, and my supervisor had told me in no uncertain terms she could not have any more petty cash for any reason. She had maxed out her petty cash allowance. And she called me one day asking for money for a taxi to go to the doctor. And I knew this client well, and I knew, okay, I can't give her petty cash. And I know in no uncertain terms this is going to end with her screaming at me. But I was like, okay, I'm going to try my new active listening skills and use them. And amazingly, the conversation did not end with her screaming at me. She found a solution to get to the doctor without the petty cash and thanked me in the end of the conversation. And that's when I was like, wow, there's really something to this, that I can change my interactions with clients and help them get what they need in a way that doesn't put all of the onus on me. And so that's just a little bit about how I've, you know, realized that these skills can be really helpful. I moved to North Carolina to get my master's in public health from UNC. And have been here ever since. So I'm excited to share what I know and what I found to be useful with y'all today. I'm going to turn this over to Rebecca.
Hey guys, I'm Rebecca Bourgeois. I'm the lead housing stability case manager at Housing for New Hope on the street outreach team. I am originally from Connecticut. I lived there for a very long time, so go Patriots and Red Sox. But the past 5 years, I was living in Texas and working there. And then just this last year during the pandemic, I actually moved to North Carolina and settled down here. But I've been in homeless services for about 13 years now in different capacities. And it's something that I'm really passionate about. And motivational interviewing in particular, it's one of those terms that we really throw around, but maybe we don't necessarily know what it means. I remember going on my first job interview fresh out of school, and they asked me, you know, what my counseling style was. And I threw out there motivational interviewing. But I am so glad they did not ask me what that meant, because I could not have explained it for anything. I just knew that was the right buzzword. But as you grow in your career and you figure things out, it's one of those tools that really can help you to explore different things with people. So my past life in Texas, I was working at an outpatient mental health clinic for homeless individuals. And I had this one client that was on my caseload. He had literally been through every other single case manager that was there. So we're talking about maybe 10 people at this point. And he's just the type of person that would go off on anybody for anything, and especially as it related to his money, because we were also his payee. But sitting down with him and figuring out why he wanted more money and why he wanted his checks earlier, it just opened up this whole other ball game. It come to find out he spends most of his money feeding the other homeless people. And he knew that he also needed to buy alcohol for himself, because otherwise he was going to start detoxing, and he had previously had seizures while detoxing. So he was very scared of that happening. So out of that fear, he was going off on people, but without sitting down and really listening and hearing what was going on, nobody would have known that. And so that kind of led to us being able to talk about motivation for change and motivation for becoming sober. And it led to him having the longest sobriety he's ever had. So things definitely can happen. So I think we're ready to go on.
All right. So I know motivational interviewing is something we talk about a lot in the COC, but since my background is specifically in active listening and mediation, we thought it would be useful to just kind of talk a little bit about where these skills fit together, and kind of how these fit in. So I kind of see active listening as kind of the core skill that is at the root of both mediation and motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing may not talk about it as active listening. They may use other terms, but when Rebecca and I really sat down and looked at the skills, and also when I've sat through motivational interviewing trainings, I've thought, okay, this is actually what I've already been trained in. This is the active listening piece. So motivational interviewing really goes beyond that with that theory of change, that Rebecca's going to talk about, but that's kind of the core skill. We're not going to train you in how to mediate today, but just kind of wanted to walk through how these fit together. And if mediation is something you're interested in, it's certainly something that there are trainings available, and I'm happy to help you find one if you're interested in the future.
So we're going to start off by what we call the spirit of motivational interviewing. And this is used with the acronym PACE. And this is how you're really going to start to engage people in these conversations. And that's really what we're interested in learning here. Like, we're not wanting people to go out there and be clinicians. It's really that engagement process of getting people to open up and talk about things and just start those conversations that are really difficult. So PACE stands for partnership, acceptance. So I've seen autonomy also be in there as the A, compassion, and evocation. So partnership, this is going to be a collaboration between you as the professional and your client. This is not you being the expert in this. This is something that you're going to work together towards. Again, we are not the expert. The client often knows themselves better than anybody else possibly could. So we are really trying to create a balance that we are working together. And when that barrier is taken away, that expectation of, oh, this professional knows way more than I do, and they know that, it really builds rapport and can build some trust with people. And this is based on a mutual understanding, so that you really learn each other, and you have this expectation built up front, right? I had too much fun finding these.
Rebecca, I lost your audio. Is that just me?
That's just you, Lloyd. I can still hear her.
So acceptance. So a person is valuable, right? So everybody that we meet is a human, really. And they have worth, and we need to acknowledge that. We want to make sure that we're expressing empathy at all times. And I say this all the time, especially on street outreach, is people that we run into, they are the most excellent BS detectors. They know if you really care about what's going on. They know if you really are invested in what's going on. And they can tell who's real and who's not. And then autonomy support is really important. The person gets to decide what's going on with them. So if their own values and interests aren't taking into account, what are they going to get out of this? And we also want to affirm things for them. So we want to acknowledge that they have strengths and acknowledge that they have barriers, and also demonstrate respect. So compassion, again, you're caring about these people. They know if it's genuine or not. They want to know that you really take an interest in their welfare, because a lot of these people have just been burned by either agencies or caseworkers or whoever in the past. So showing that you truly care about them and are looking out for them, it can mean the world. And then motivational interviewing is based on evocation. So we're not telling somebody what they need to do. We're trying to get them to verbalize that themselves. So we want them to not only bring up the motivation for their change, but also what they think the solutions are for that change. And this is really based on the model of change. And so I think most people have probably seen this before, but starting off at pre-contemplation, this is when somebody hasn't even figured out that something is a problem yet. They haven't considered it. It's not even in their mind. Contemplation is when there's some thoughts there, they're not really sure, they're considering it. Preparation, you're starting to make some things happen that's going to get you ready to start that change. Action is when you're putting those things into action. And then you have maintenance and termination. But I also want to throw in that there's always going to be relapse in there as well. So you can circle back and go to any one of these other stages. And people will tend to go back and forth because life isn't always some pretty diagram, right? And I like to compare this to, let's say, COVID weight that people have gained, right? So in the beginning of the pandemic, we hunkered down and we were enjoying good food and our gyms closed down. So we weren't really getting out and doing anything. And we were baking bread at home and other goodies and takeout and all that stuff. So we weren't really thinking about it. But then you come to weigh in at contemplation and you realize that you gained 10, 15 pounds during COVID. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe I need to start doing something about this. Maybe I need to make some changes, but I'm not really sure what to do. Preparation, you're starting to meal plan. You're starting to think of ways that maybe you could buy a bike off of Amazon and do it that way. So that prep work that goes into putting an action plan into work. And then you're doing the steps And hopefully, you know, you lost that weight. I think that's good.
All right. So those kind of platform of the values that we hope that people can bring to their work with clients to partner with them, to bring humility into that work, to elicit a client being open to talking to you and sharing their perspective, and then also thinking about what is it that they are motivated to change, what is it that would be helpful for them from their perspective. Those are all kind of theoretical bases. And these active listening skills that we're going to go over are really going to help you to implement those in your conversations with clients. So active listening definition. So it's listening to a party in a way that removes a person's biases and goals out of the conversations. It makes the speaker feel heard and helps the speaker listen to their own ideas. So this is really different than the way we talk most of the time. There may be some rock stars on this call who just naturally are active listeners and do this all the time. But I find that most of us in our everyday conversations, we give our opinions, we share our perspective. If someone tells us about a problem, maybe we give them advice. This is very different than this active listening skill. So you can think of active listening as a toolkit that helps you gain more complete information from the client. So Rebecca's example was a really great example of this. You don't know what you don't know. And you may be really surprised when you use this active listening skill, what comes out and is really helpful information to working with someone. If you don't know that someone is escalating because they're really scared that they're going to detox, I mean, how can you really work with them to motivate towards change? So that's a really important piece of information that you might not get if you're not using these kind of elicitation skills. Makes the person feel heard. Anyone who has ever, been on a call and, with maybe your bank, and you've been ready to yell at that person, and then they kind of reflect things back to you, makes you feel heard, and you're kind of have the wind out of your sails, and you're like, well, I kind of wanted to yell at someone today, but I guess I'm not going to be able to. You know how effective this can be. When someone feels heard, they're just going to immediately sort of become more present and be ready to have that conversation with you. Makes the client feel comfortable expressing themselves and telling their story. Again, this is so important for building rapport, for building trust, that we need to do anything with our clients. De-escalate trigger clients. I kind of talked about that with that bank example. I always try to go back to that, like how you feel when someone's like reflecting back to you and you just can't yell, you just can't be mad anymore. You're like, well, okay, let's talk about my problem. It can prevent advocacy from triggering clients. We don't tend to talk about advocacy. That's more of a intimate partner violence term, but basically the work we do with them can be very triggering, right? Whatever we're working on, it can remind them of past negative experiences. Maybe we talk about going to the doctor and they've had trauma there, or maybe we talk about going to look for a job and they've had trauma there. And by using this active listening skill, we can prevent what we're saying from triggering that trauma for someone. And it can help people to guide them to make their own decisions in the face of difficult choices. And at the end of the day, I think that's the core of what we want to do here. We don't want to make decisions for people because those decisions are never going to stick. I think we can all think of times when someone's told us what to do and hasn't really been that effective. Maybe we said we'd do it, didn't really stick. I think Rebecca's example is a great one. Let's say, someone says, you're gonna lose weight. It's not really going to work. We have to find that motivation ourselves internally and say, you know what, I really want to get healthy. This is something I really want to do. And this is how I'm going to do it. Even if, we said, I really want to lose weight. And then someone else said, okay, well, you're going to go on the keto diet. Like if I was talking to my sister who's on the keto diet, she'd tell me keto, it's a great way to go. Okay. But I am never going to want to give up fruit. I love fruit. and so if she decides for me how I'm going to lose weight, that's not going to work. It's not going to be effective for me. It's not going to meet my needs. And so we can really help people make choices that work for them and that fit their motivations. All right, so the goals of active listening. So while speaking with a person, we should always be thinking, what is the goal of this conversation? And they, not you, should define the conversation. So if you already knew what the goal was before the client walked in the door, that's not the goal. You've got to listen to them to figure out what are they aiming for here? Why are they talking to me? What are they looking for? Throughout the conversation, you're going to be steering them towards their goals, right? So you've determined what their goals are, and then you're going to help steer the conversation to help them think about more about those goals, create action plans. So this is very defined by our clients' goals. Some potential goals include they gain insight or understanding. So they may come to you saying, I'm really frustrated with something. They're confused. They want to understand it. Or I don't know why I keep doing this, right? You gain understanding. They want you to understand their point of view. That's a very common goal, where they're coming from. Maybe they want you to know the information you're missing about why they broke a rule or why they didn't make their appointment. They explore their feelings or desires. They may come in conflicted and they're trying to just figure out between these conflicts how they feel about something. They may want to define their goals and needs, right? What's most important to them? I've got all these things to do. I feel really overwhelmed. And here's the most important thing for me right now. Feeling heard. Being heard by itself can be a very common goal. Hearing themselves. Sometimes we talk to hear ourselves, right? Anyone who's ever called a friend just to be like, I just need a vent right now, that's just trying to hear yourself, right? And that's an important goal. And if someone's just trying to feel heard, you want to know that because they may not be ready to make a decision or create an action plan. At this point, they're just trying to feel heard. Being empowered to use their own voice, or creating a plan. Maybe they're ready. They're in that prep stage. They're ready to create a plan. Great, let's go. Let's take action. So really defining the goal, figuring out what are they aiming for? That's a really important part of what you're listening for in active listening. So here's the toolkit that's going to help you do that. So these are the core tools of active listening. Being 100% present, using your body language to listen, summarizing, clarifying, exploring, and reflecting. And we're going to go into each of these. All right, be 100% present. So you're going to listen carefully. You're really going to be focused. Again, when you think about, I'm listening for someone's goal, think about how intensely you really have to listen to be able to figure out what someone's goals are. You can't just hear something and go off and think about something else. You really have to be focused. You're focusing on what is being said, which means you're not taking what they said and thinking about some other time that another client said something like this, or thinking about what you've got to do. You're really focusing. You're avoiding judgment interpretation. As much as you can, you're not going to be thinking about, what you think about this or how this reflects on your own life or whether or not they mean it. You're going to be very focused in putting yourself in their shoes. And you're going to resist distractions. Those could be internal distractions. Again, my to-do list I've got to do. I got to get you out of the office in 3 minutes. And you're going to resist distractions outside. Try to make it a really focused environment to do this. As Rebecca said, people notice when you're not fully present. So there's kind of two sides of not being fully present. One is a person's going to notice and they might say something. Do you have something else to do? Or they may not say something and just clam up. But one way or another, they're going to notice and they're not going to be able to fully share. The other thing is these skills take full presence. They're really difficult. They're exhausting. Anyone who's using these skills a lot can tell you at the end of a conversation, they're like, I'm so tired. That took so much work. This is active listening because it's active work. And you're not going to be able to do it if you're thinking about something else. I think that the avoiding judgment, it just takes mindfulness. It's just like meditating. Judgmental thoughts are going to come into our head. Distracting thoughts are going to come into our head. We can't prevent that, but we're just going to notice it. We're going to come back to that present moment and focusing on the client. And as we practice it, we get better. So body language. So being 100% present internally and then showing that presence with our body language to the person. So some ways that we can show non-judgmental listening. We fully face the person. We're not turning, our body away. We're fully facing them. We're keeping our arms relaxed. So it's very easy to cross your arms, but we're really trying to keep our arms open, showing openness. Maybe we're leaning in, showing I'm really interested in what you're talking about. Making eye contact, not constant, intense, intimidating eye contact, but occasional eye contact. And then nodding. Nodding's a great way to show. You don't have to say a word, but I hear you. I see you. I'm confirming, what you're saying. Some other people may have, are there any additional ways? I just want to give an opportunity for other ideas that aren't listed here for showing non-judgmental listening with our bodies. Any other ideas?
Being on the same level with people, like not standing and sitting.
That's a great one. And that reminds me of a experience I had once, that, I had a client and she had come into my office and we had a very escalated conversation, and then she stormed out of the office. And I went up to her room and I actually sat on the floor. She was actually sitting on her bed, and I sat on the floor because I just needed her to see, like, she because her problem was she felt like I thought I was better than her, and that was why she had escalated. And so sitting on the floor showed her, like, I'm totally here for you. I'm totally listening. And that physical show of that really helped her to just calm down and tell me what was going on. And so that's a great one. Sitting on the same level, making sure we're not standing over people can be really intimidating. Anyone else, any other ones?
I agree with what he just said. Meeting them where they're at. This is David with Housing for New Hope, and treating them with respect, because a lot of people are seeing people, being homeless as less than. But if you treat them with respect and dignity, they seem to open up a little bit more to you.
Yeah, exactly. And these are like physical manifestations of that respect. Absolutely.
Smiling, letting them know that you're welcoming what they're saying. Some people, even though you're giving them all of this attention, you look like you don't want to be bothered.
Yes.
Also, if someone comes up, like if you're outside, which I get that because sometimes I communicate outside, I may interrupt them. Just, could you hold on a minute and let that person know that I'm in the middle of something? Can I make an appointment with you? Because I need to deal with, take care of this right now. So letting them know that what they're saying, you're not going to let someone else interrupt you if they happen to walk up to you, if you're not in an office or a setting that someone can't.
Yeah, those are great. I think absolutely your facial expressions, being mindful of what's on your face. Yeah, if you look like you're thinking about something else, or you look like you don't want to be there, it's going to be that same thing. Well, you don't really want to listen to me right now, so why should I tell you anything, right?
Exactly.
And then, yeah, we may not always be able to be 100% present. That's absolutely true. We may not always be able to avoid distractions. So being able to say, this isn't the best time for us to have this conversation. I really, really want to hear what you're saying. Let's make an appointment. Absolutely. Absolutely. Lloyd, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I was going to build on your example of going into the person's room and sitting on the floor, and that really showed them being in the dominant position, right? And so that they're in charge, and you're listening and you're available to them. I mean, it's one of the basic positions in animals, right? The more dominant animal will look down on the more submissive animal, and so that kind of basic position of I'm here for you, and I'm below you. I'm taking, following your lead. I think is a really good example.
Right. And another thing I was doing was being in her space, right? So our offices are our spaces. Not every client really feels that comfortable there. A street outreach, going out, that's an example of being in someone's space, right? Where they feel comfortable, where they feel safe. We can even ask people, where do you feel most comfortable? What's the best place for us to have this conversation, instead of just assuming that best place is going to be in our office, right? Or thinking about the configuration of our offices. There may be a desk between us and our clients in the office. Can we come around the desk, and sit on the same side as them? Can we make things a little bit more casual in our office? But really thinking about what's that space that someone's going to feel comfortable in. Great. These are all great. Thanks so much for sharing, everybody. All right. So tool number 3, reflecting. So this is where we are reflecting emotions, reflecting what the person is feeling. So you're going to reflect with phrases like, could it be that, or I wonder if, what I guess I'm hearing is you're feeling. We're really working on here, reflecting what someone is saying back to us with emotion words, really focused on the emotions here. If I'm hearing you from where you sit, and trying as much as we can not to extrapolate out emotions. So one of the things that I see is, so someone comes in and they say like, you know, I feel, let's say someone says, you know, I feel frustrated, XYZ. And then we say, I hear you that you're feeling angry. And then the person may further escalate because I wasn't feeling angry. I was feeling frustrated. So we need to try not to extrapolate out another emotion, but really stick with the emotion that person is telling us they're feeling, right? So sometimes we can further escalate people or shut people down by taking one emotion and turning it into another, but just staying with the emotion the person has said. You know, I hear you. You're really frustrated. You know, and not, I tend to use the same emotion word that someone gave me just because I can't guess what another word that would be that exact same feeling. They've told me what they're feeling. I'm just going to reflect it back to them. So we're going to do a practice here. We're going to put y'all into some breakout rooms and we're going to do a little practice here just to practice this reflection. And I will stick the ideas for terms back on the page once we explain the activity, just in case it's helpful for people. So everyone right now, jot some ideas that your partner is going to reflect. You can say one thing I like about myself, one thing you should know about me, and one thing I'd like to change. Choose things about your personality, spirit, or soul, not your physical appearance, and choose something that you're comfortable discussing in a professional setting. So we're going to give you maybe 30 seconds just to jot that down. And then what you're going to do with your partner once we jump into these breakout groups is you're going to say your sentence to your partner. And then the listener is going to respond with a reflection. They're going to practice responding that back to you. So if you don't mind giving us an example, Rebecca, do you mind telling us using one of these 3 things and telling us something about yourself?
Sure. So one thing you should know about me is that I like to decorate cakes in my spare time.
Great. So if I'm Rebecca's partner, and I'm going to look at this, I'm going to think, okay, what's the right phrase? So I might say something like, I'm hearing you that you really enjoy decorating cakes in your spare time, right? So it's not that hard, but we're just going to practice the skill. Again, some of you, this is probably a reminder of what you do every day, but we're just going to flex that muscle. All right. So hopefully everyone has written something down now. And we're going to pop you into your breakout groups. We're going to have about 4 minutes to do this, and then we'll come back.
Hanalea and Rebecca, I didn't put you into a room. Would you like to go to one?
Oh, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Are they in their rooms now, Ruby? How do we
Some
tell?
of them are, some of them haven't joined yet.
Okay, good.
If you haven't clicked on the reminder to go into the room, please do so now. Erwin,
Our one's a little technically challenged. So. There we go.
Do you want to bring them back at 10:45?
I was thinking actually at 10:42, if that's okay with you, Rebecca, Ruby. I think that's enough time for them. Is that all right? Will that work?
Yeah, it'll give them a 60-second countdown.
Okay, great. Is it counting them down, Ruby?
Yes, they got 8 seconds.
Awesome. All right, welcome back, everybody. Well, hopefully that was a good practice, and just got you started kind of with a little mini version of thinking about these skills. We're gonna move on. Maybe you learned something about someone in the community you don't know that well. All right, so going beyond reflection. So what reflection can help us do is it can make someone feel heard, which is super important, but that's all reflection can do. When we really want to help propel someone towards thinking deeper about something, solving a problem, creating a plan, we need more than just reflection. So the next skill is summarize. This is where we go beyond just reflecting the specific emotion that someone has, and we summarize the person's statements, the situation thus far, what they've told us. So it allows them to reflect on the whole of what they've said. Maybe they have complex feelings about something. Maybe they feel, let's keep going with our weight loss one. I really like that example. I think it's something we can all relate to, except maybe Lloyd, who lost weight during the pandemic. So let's take me, right? Like maybe I feel like I'm really frustrated that I gained weight during COVID. I want to lose this weight, but I also feel like I don't really want to change the way I eat. And I also feel frustrated because I feel like I'm not eating that poorly. Why have I gained weight? This is really frustrating. So I'm feeling a lot of different things, right? And so a summary is going to help me like hear that conflict. It's going to help me hear that there's a lot going on in my head and make me realize, wow, maybe I haven't taken action because actually I'm really conflicted. And maybe I didn't realize that. Maybe I thought, so for another example here. So my sister, she was telling me, I'm really frustrated because I bought this exercise plan. I really want to do it and I keep not doing it. Right? Like, and she was like, why am I not doing this? And she didn't know why she kept not taking action. This is probably a really similar thing to something we hear with our clients. They want to do it, but they're not taking action. So by summarizing for her and saying like, you know, I'm hearing that you're frustrated with yourself. You really want to do this plan. You think it would really help with your pain, but you're super busy and you're already committed to Pilates and yoga and you've got a kid. Maybe, you know, and you're feeling like maybe this just isn't the right time. So by summarizing all that together for her, she's realizing, oh, here's everything that's going on with me. Because when we think about change, we tend to think it's really simple. Why am I just not doing this? Or it's someone else's fault. And so by hearing everything we've said, we can really hone in on, you know what? So my sister's able to say, you know what? You're right. I'm going to put this on the back burner right now because I just don't have time. Or she's able to say, you know what, you're right. It's about committing. It's about making an appointment for myself. Maybe I need to back burner this other thing. Maybe I need to take a break with my Pilates classes so I can give this time, you know, and so they can really decide which direction they want to go in when they hear that summary. It helps them remember forgotten points. Oh yeah, I did forget that, you know what, I did do that plan for a while and it wasn't helping me that much. You know, I mentioned that and I forgot. And it helps a person decide the most important topics to discuss. So they're going to hear their whole summary. You know what? Yeah, let's talk more about the fact that I don't feel like I have enough time for the things I want to do. You know, and they're going to zero in. So it really helps them see that plethora of options in the discussion and really focus in on what's most important to them.
And I think too that it shows that you are actually listening to the whole thing that they said. So when you can repeat that back in your own words, it really gives that whole perspective that you heard them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm a person, I'm a note taker. So, you know, I ask people, you know, well, do you mind, give me a minute, let me get me some paper out so I can take some notes. So that lets them know, to me, in my opinion, that you really want to be able to help me because you may not remember everything that I say. So with you having notes in front of you, you can also reflect on those and then leave space I leave space in between because the person may come back and reflect a little bit more. So, and it also allows you to see their growth if you have a conversation with them later on.
For sure. Yeah, taking notes, making sure that if we are taking notes, we check in with someone. Is it okay? Like Veronica's saying, that's a great point. Yeah, some of us may be note takers. Some of us may not. Some of us may be very auditory, but whatever works for you to help you summarize what that person is saying. Absolutely. And then clarifying. Again, decisions aren't simple. Our actions that we take in life aren't simple. And often we feel conflicted about things, right? Maybe we're trying to make a difficult decision. We're trying to figure out, let's take the example of my sister, trying to figure out, I want to do this, but I'm not doing this. Why are my actions and my feelings in conflict? So we can help point out seeming contradictions and ask for clarification. So my sister, you know, you really want to do this, but at the same time, you know, you haven't made time for this, you know, and she can really hear that conflict and clarify. Or maybe she says, you know, I want to do it at one point in the conversation, but at another point she says, you know what, maybe I'm just not that motivated. That's a clear conflict, right? And so, you know, On the one hand, you feel like you want to do it. On the other hand, you're not feeling that motivated. And that conflict can help really pull apart someone's actions and feelings and help them dive into, where is this conflict coming from? You can ask someone to clarify things that seem ambiguous or unclear, so in the example that Rebecca gave about her client, maybe he says something where, he's saying, my money is just going out the door, right? Okay, your money's going out the door. Where is it going? Tell me about where you spent your money last week. And so really helping someone focus in on details, right? That could be really important for them or for us. Asking someone to explain something that they've spoken about but haven't fully explained. My sister, okay, you say you don't have enough time. Tell me about how you're spending your time. Tell me about, what's taking up your time. And then that can help her really go through and realize, what, this was taking up my time, but that's not really a priority for me. So, I want to shift around my schedule. Or maybe she realized that she goes through and she said, you know what, I'm busier than I realized. I need to be easier on myself, whatever that is. So just I'll throw it out to the group. Anything I haven't mentioned about why it's important to help clients focus on ambiguity and contradictions.
I think it's important to work with people, with any contradictions, because sometimes it gives you clarity, but sometimes, sometimes the clarity is for you, but sometimes when you ask them to expand on it, to clarify it, it actually allows them to sometimes hear themselves, which sometimes can make a difference.
Right. So I think that example of my sister is a great one where she's frustrated with herself. She feels like there's no reason for her actions, and when she hears herself speaking, she realized, what, there are a lot of reasons that my actions and my feelings are in conflict. This is more complicated than I realized, so yeah, hearing yourself, having a client realize why they haven't taken action or why they keep falling back on something, a client who keeps missing appointments and they're just telling you, I'm just busy, right? Okay, getting to that deeper point, helping them show, you told me that you felt really sick last week and that you really wanted to figure out what was going on. But you also missed 3 appointments, and that's a conflict that a person may not even realize why I'm doing this. And if they can figure out why is that conflict, maybe there's another priority here. Maybe there's something I'm afraid of that I didn't realize or admit to myself. Then that can really help them. Yeah, go ahead, Malcolm.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I had to refocus on the question for a second, but one of the things that stuck in my mind was a mentor of mine who reiterated a number of times that people often want to. So it's the idea that if you want to, it tends to mean that you don't, right? I want to be fit. His example was always, I want to be in good shape, but pizza. And so it would be this place where your actions don't align with your statements, and it thought about what integrity really was, which was this process of your thoughts, your speaking, and your actions being in alignment. And sometimes people can make it seem complicated if they say or you tend to blame yourself with saying I want this to happen, but I'm not doing it. So I'm just super complicated. And what's wrong with me? When actually the thing you can offer the client that makes it the most different is the permission to give up things that they actually don't want, that someone else is telling them that they want, or they're doing for someone else. And then they naturally move towards the thing that they want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's so powerful. I mean, we go back to this sort of theory that Rebecca gave us that change is not going to happen if the person isn't at the center of that change. We cannot give people motivation, right? And helping to elicit, do you really want to do this, or are you telling you want to do this because you think I want you to do it? That's going to be important to not just building rapport, but creating real opportunities for change. Yeah, Lloyd, go ahead.
Yeah, to build on that, those are excellent thoughts. I think as well, this whole process of active listening, really helps build trust with the client, and it helps really engage, particularly when it's non-judgmental and we're just allowing the client or person to really set the agenda and to help them sort out the ambiguities and the challenges that they are facing in their life. So trust building, I think, is a big part of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. These are all great. And I think really highlight why we do this, right? Let's go to finally the last skill, which is, I believe, the last. Yeah, just want to make sure. Exploring and propelling. So up till now, we've reflected, we've summarized, we've showed people that we're hearing them, and we're clarifying some seeming contradictions, right? But the last skill is how we either dive deep into a specific point, go deep, or we open things up, right? So this is really where we drive the conversation. And when we get really good at the skill, we can have a lot more power in the conversation to help someone through a problem. So we check in with someone to see how the conversation is working. So that gives them an opportunity to say, you know what, we're talking about X, but really my important thing is Y. We ask questions that encourage the client to dig deeper. You know, you've told me that, that you just don't like going to the doctor. You know, I've heard that. Where do you think that comes from? You know, allowing someone to dig deeper and think about deeper problems that maybe they themselves don't even understand. Asking a question to open the conversation thoughts up. So we're really focused in this conversation about like a missed appointment, but I want to have a larger conversation about how a person thinks about their health, right? So we can open this up. Where do you think this fits into your overall health goals? You know, maybe I want to dig deeper into this specific question about why a person keeps missing their appointments. Maybe I want to open things up because I think it's really important that we have an overall conversation about their health, right? So I can really drive the conversation. And again, always focusing in on what I've decided based on listening is the person goals for this conversation. It's not my goals, but theirs. Asking a question to encourage a client to clarify feelings, thoughts, desires, identify key issues. And we do this by asking open-ended questions, right? So open-ended questions are the bread and butter of active listening. Like if you have your tools in your toolkit, I think this along with reflection are like the two most important tools that you have, these open-ended questions. So we're going to do some activities to talk about just open-ended questions. So I'm going to ask people to put in the chat whether they think something is an open-ended question or a closed-ended question. So our first question here is, where do you want to live? Is that an open-ended question or a closed-ended question? And I'll just give you a second to write it into the chat. This is great. We've got some conflict. I love it. We've got some people saying closed, some people saying open. So I'll tell you, I consider this an open-ended question. And the reason is because it does not elicit a yes or no response. Some people may have said closed because it's still pretty specific. So this is a specific open-ended question, but I can't answer this question with a yes or no. So I consider this open-ended. Let's go to the next. Okay, closed or open. Would you be willing to have a roommate? So a lot of agreement here that this is a closed question. And I just want to mention something. I saw Anne's comment that this that Anne felt this was closed because it could be answered with a one-word answer. That's right, Anne. This is a very narrow, open-ended question. So when we talk about opening up the conversation or narrowing it down to get specifics, this may be useful to us at a time where we really want to narrow down. We need you to tell us where you want to live, right? But if we wanted to open this up, we might say something like, what's most important to you when you look at a neighborhood, right? So we can make decisions about, you know, how we open up or how we get down specific, right? Absolutely. That's a great point, Anne.
And I think even with the, do you want a roommate question, if someone says no, it can be, tell me more about that. So
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's an option, but I would encourage, at that point, we're still directing the conversation, you know, down towards something. So in a second, we're going to talk about how to open up questions. And I think that's really going to help us, because if we have, you know, sometimes we can't avoid it. You know, are you allergic to X? You just got to ask someone if they have an allergy. But how could we make that open? Like, tell me about, you know, what you're allergic to, right? So there's always an open-ended option. And I encourage us to think about choosing that option. So one more here. What led to your homelessness? Open or closed? Great. So we saw a lot of agreement here. So this one's kind of easy, right? It's kind of the most open question. What led to your homelessness? Ooh, huge, right? This is a really, really open-ended question. All right, so let's go to the next activity, which is where we're gonna open up. Oh, wait, one more. No, this is open up the question. Okay. So we're gonna open up some closed questions. So this is a closed question. Did you follow up with the calling the resources I gave you? So we got a yes or no answer here. So I'm going to ask for people to write in the chat how they would ask this question in an open-ended way. And there's no right or wrong answer here, so hopefully we'll see a few different ideas. Great. I see some great ideas in chat. And again, yeah, there's no, tell me about the resources you followed up with. Yeah, absolutely. What, if anything, have you done so far with the resources I gave you? Great. How did our calls go? How's it going? Yeah, how's it going? It's a great question. So lots of different ways that we can ask an open-ended question. Perfect. This is my version, not right or wrong, just the one I would ask. Tell me about your plan for connecting with the resources we've been talking about. You know, I love what y'all gave. This is another one. All right, let's do the next one. Are you willing to live with a roommate? So here we go, Anne, just for you. We're gonna open this up. What is a way that you could, and I know this is a question we have to ask a lot. So what is a way that we can ask about a client's preferences with a roommate that is not a yes or no question? Great. I see some great ones coming in. I love Anne's. What are your thoughts about living with a roommate? I see some similar ones here. Tell me what, if anything, you think would be the benefit of living with another person. Great. What would make you want to live with a roommate? Great. Yeah. So here's my version. What are your thoughts about living with a roommate? Which is very similar to what a lot of y'all gave. I think if we cannot assume the answer, right? So I see some of our responses are like, what would be the benefit of living with a roommate? That could be a way to ask it. If someone has said, for instance, that I think that would be a great one if someone's told us, well, I feel kind of unsure about whether I want to live a roommate. Like they've already told us that. And then we're trying to like help them elicit their feelings. Well, what would be the benefits, right? And now what would be the downsides, right? But I think if we really don't know, we don't know anything about how they feel, we want to ask something a little bit more open-ended that doesn't assume how the person feels. So this is a great way to do that. Oh, I guess I gave the answer on this. Are you willing to work? I guess I didn't correctly do the clicking. So I'll just tell y'all how I opened this up one, and maybe people can give us some other ideas. So are you willing to work? My version of this was, what have you thought about doing to increase your income? So again, makes a lot fewer assumptions about how they're gonna increase their income, and helps us find out where they're at. Any other ideas about how we could open up this question? Yeah, what ideas do you have for increasing your income? What are ways you know to make money? Great. Focusing in on their skills. Mm-hmm. All right, not seeing a whole lot more. This is a hard one, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do this. I think this is a question we get a lot. Yeah, I've seen some job opportunities. Oh, but you know what? Actually, this is just to catch you on this, Veronica. I think this is actually a closed question. Are you interested in hearing about them in detail? Yes or no? So you have to be careful. I mean, we all do it, so not to call you out, but I think it's, and have you thought about the types of work you'd like to seek out? Also a yes or no question. So we could very easily make that open. Tell me your thoughts about what types of work you'd like to seek out, you know, or for Veronica's, how would you feel about hearing about them? You know, so we can really easily open up these questions, but it's so easy to fall into a yes or no question. This is why we practice. Yeah. All right, handing it over back to Rebecca.
So resistance is something that happens quite often, especially when people feel ambivalence towards change. So they're having mixed feelings about it, right? So they kind of want to do something, but they kind of don't at the same time. Or maybe they, you know, going back to Hanalea's example, they feel like that's what you want them to do. Or it happens a lot if people are mandated for certain treatments or programs, that they just aren't really sure with how they want to proceed with that. So we talk about it being sort of a dance with a client. We don't want to wrestle them. There's no person on top that's going to be the winner. It's trying to follow their lead and see where they go, but also kind of match what pace they're at. Arguing doesn't get people anywhere. So if they are like, no, I don't want to do this, we're not going to argue with that, but we're going to kind of try and explore that resistance and where that came from. And again, we're going to go back to Hanalea's active listening skills, where we're going to reflect the concerns that they have, but then also explore that conversation. And so I think the next slide, we actually have a little bit of a video to watch how to do that.
Give me 1 second while I pull it up.
I don't think we can hear the sound on your end.
Oh, they can't hear it. How do I do it where they can hear it from my computer?
And when you click share screen, make sure you press the button in the bottom left corner, I believe. It says optimize for sound clip or something like that.
right, so I'm gonna stop sharing. Share sound, maybe?
Yes, yes.
Oh, optimize for video clip. I see it. Perfect. Thank you, Ruby. All right, let's try this again.
Josh, what brought you in today? It sounded kind of urgent.
My sister said she's going to kick me out, or that she might kick me out. And I don't know what I'm going to do.
Wow, tell me more. What's going on?
Well, it's complicated. Basically, she said if I don't take my meds every day, then I can't stay there anymore.
Oh, have you been taking your meds?
I'm taking my meds now, but I stopped. I did stop for a while. I stopped for about a month. I didn't call you. But I'm back on them.
Well, that's good. So can you tell me more about what brought you to decide not to take them for a while?
Well, it's been, we talked about this before. Like, I know it's the smart thing to be on my meds because of the bipolar disease, but they change me, and like I'm safer, but I'm not like artist Josh is harder to get into. Like, I just don't have the same, I can't do my art in the same way, and that's what usually gets me thinking, like, maybe this time I'd be okay.
Yeah.
If I just, I take them every other day, or I cut them in half, or I stop taking them, and then it just goes on, and I gotta, then.
Well, let's talk about that part about then it goes on, because I do really hear what you're saying about wanting to be more in touch with your artist self, and I think that is a really important part of who you are.
It is.
But tell me, what does that future look like where you're not taking meds? Maybe you're more creative, but are there other aspects as well?
Well, it's, I don't always know what to do, because I can not take my meds, do my art, and I do know where that's going to send me, and that's back to the hospital usually. And I can stick to my plan and just figure out how to do art in a different way that's not the same. It's just I don't want my sister telling me what to do about it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not telling her what to do for her whatever.
Right.
I want her to trust that I am just doing my best, and it is hard being me. It is hard taking your meds every day for the rest of your life, because you might end up in the hospital.
Well, so what you just said to me is really kind of powerful. Could you imagine saying that to her?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it to her quite like that. I realized, like, it would have to be like a time when I'm not so agitated about it, and when she's not so agitated about it. She has been there for me,
Yeah.
She is, she's a pretty good sister, all in all. It's just, it felt like she's threatening me when she says, I'm going to lose my home if I don't take my meds. And it's my meds, it's my head, it's my health.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. These are your choices, and sometimes choices are harder than other ones. So, I think you've said to me before how much it means to you to have a safe place to live and to be with family. So that is a choice you've made in the past, and I think you have a right to always say what's the best for me right now. But I think it sounds like a good conversation that's not in the heat of the moment might really be rewarding.
I mean, I think that's still the choice I would make, but I just don't want this expectation that I'm going to be perfect, and if I ever slip, ever in my life, that she's kicking me out.
Right.
Like, that doesn't feel healthy for me either.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any comments on that video or things that they liked that they saw or points that they'd like to make.
I think she was a real good listener. She piggybacked off of what he was saying. And I call it like being a tape recorder, like you were saying earlier, as far as using the same phrases that they use. Don't change the word from frustrated to angry. So I think she piggybacked off of him real good. And she showed that she was actively listening. She was relaxed in her body language. She did the nodding. So I think she really listened and allowed him to pretty much come to his own conclusion without her really giving a lot of feedback. And it did escalate him because he became, his voice calmed down. He really saw that his sister wasn't the bad guy, when in the beginning he was really defensive. So I think she did a good job.
Yeah, excellent points. Thank you. And Shantae, you got your hand up?
I do. I like that. I like that what she told him about what he said, that it was powerful. And I think that was important to help him understand that he does have some control about, whether he's taking his meds, and he has really good thought processes about why he's not taking his meds. And that was just very empowering. And I thought that was very, a good adjective to use in that moment for him.
Yeah, definitely. The choice is his, no matter what.
Right.
It's on him. Thank you. And Malcolm?
Thanks. I think I remarked out loud when she propelled him forward, when he said the most powerful statement of the that he makes about, and I apologize, I forget the exact statement, but it was essentially around that, like, the struggling to be on meds for the rest of my life to avoid being in the hospital. And she acknowledges what a powerful statement it was. And then could you imagine, she said something around the lines of, like, what would it be like to say what you said to me to your sister, which is the get into action and get it into action in a specific area that then allows him to, like, work with it, like, see what it looks like in that box of asking it, and find out what he needs to do to then ask that question. So she set up some parameters for him to work on with goals with just like one question.
Well, great. So we're running a bit short on time, so it's gonna be a little shorter than we intended, but maybe we can give y'all a little bit of a peek into what doing this activity will look like, and then encourage y'all to maybe find a colleague to practice this with. But our last thing today is we wanted to give y'all a chance to put this into practice. So we're gonna send you back into your breakout rooms, and you're going to pick a problem you're working on in your actual life, or either that or something you feel conflicted about, that you feel comfortable talking about. And you're gonna practice talking about that with your partner, and your partner is gonna practice the active listening skills. So again, refraining from opinions or statements of our own, and really focusing on doing the reflection, asking open-ended questions, and pointing out contradictions and places where we need clarification. So you're gonna have about, I say about 10 minutes for this, so about 5 minutes each. Again, this is gonna feel a little short, and you're not gonna get to the solution to your problem, but hopefully at least this will give you just a little bit of an opportunity to practice, and then we'll come back at the very end and have a couple minutes for discussion.
This has been very good. Hanalea, Rebecca, really appreciate it. Ruby as well for your support. I'd like to do a preview at the end of what we have coming up next month. Hopefully there'll be just a minute.
Sure. Yep. Sounds good. We might run a minute over, but I think we'll be okay.
Sure.
For those who are still in the room, Erwin and Valerie, are y'all having trouble getting into the breakout rooms, or did y'all just have to step away? Oh, just had to step away.
Sorry, I had to take a phone call.
Are they still able to join?
Yes.
Or maybe.
I'm moving people. We had some people that dropped off the call.
Okay, got it.
Hanalea, what time do you want to bring them back?
Ruby, sorry, what'd you say?
What time do you want to bring them back?
So I think we'll bring them back at 27.
Okay.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I know that probably felt super short. Normally we like to give a lot more time for this, but we only have an hour and a half today. So hopefully that gave you a little taste, and I really recommend that you find a colleague to do this exercise with in more time. It can be really helpful, but just want to give a little bit of an opportunity for reflection. So feel free to answer any of these questions. What did you notice during the exercise? What challenges did you experience? What was hard? And do you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Malcolm.
For the sake of filling silence from other people, I'll keep talking. Take the space, people, if you want to say something. One thing that I noticed, I had a partner that I particularly enjoyed working with. But I noticed that when you are, you naturally, and as also a partner that I don't know very well. So when you are naturally looking to listen, you build rapport at a much faster current than you would if it were sort of stagnant water or you weren't looking right. You can get closer to someone, and we talked about some pretty significant things in the span of 3 minutes, right? So I did notice that the structure really allows you to look for the best in a person, and I think that's probably why a lot of us got into this work at some component somewhere.
That's so true. I think a lot of times when we meet someone, we're thinking about what am I going to say, right? How am I going to be interesting, right? And when we shift that towards this sort of listening, it does allow us to build that rapport and that trust so much faster. Absolutely. Anything else?
The person that I worked with, that I was joined with, she talked about a client, and as she was talking with the active listening and just being open-minded, giving that feedback, it kind of allows you to go into her zone, walk in her shoes. She was saying that the young lady, what was going on, some of the things that was going on with her, and it kind of put you in her shoes or even in the young person's shoes. And I kind of flip back and forth from what motivates me and what would motivate me to get this person to do what, kind of to engage. And I went from the standpoint, because this person was a single parent, I could identify with that. And as I was telling her, I would do whatever it takes to do, to benefit my children. And sometimes you got to go through the back door to get to the same result, and not necessarily kind of manipulate, as she was saying, not necessarily manipulate her, but what's most important to her. Sometimes you have to listen at what's most important to possibly get that person to come around, to engage. And as she was talking, it just put me in, what can I do to help this person? What would I do? And it seems like as the lady was talking, she was talking about the young person's children. And to me, that's the focal point for that young person, her children. So sometimes you have to look at what's most important to them and try to work from that angle to try to assist them or get them to see what needs to be done.
Well, it sounds like y'all had some great experiences. I wish we had more time to discuss. Unfortunately, we don't. But thanks for those who shared. And I think that's a great example of how you could do this with a colleague, maybe even try it with some problem solving on some client issues. We all have challenges with our clients, and that's a great way to suggest to do this with a colleague. You don't have to share about, something personal if you don't want to. just before we wrap up and give Lloyd a minute to give folks an eye into what's going next, I have some resources here on how you can learn more about motivational interviewing. If folks want them, I think we can probably send them out. But just an opportunity here to learn more. This skill takes much longer than we had today, so this is. And I will thank everyone for your time and turn it back over to Lloyd.
A
All right,
quick
thank you.
question. Is it possible that we can get this PowerPoint?
Yeah, I think we can send it out.
Thank you.
And it'll be posted on the Durham coc.org website. Ruby will post it by the end of next week, so the information will be there for the community. I do want to acknowledge before I end our session, acknowledge Michael Conroy's statement in the chat regarding his experience, that he says it was very helpful when Serena not only reflected what I was saying, but also recognized and acknowledged the steps I've already taken. It was very validating. I think it's easy to just reflect back exactly what they said, but it takes more to build the rapport with validation and help someone explore more ways of thinking about a problem. Thanks for sharing that, Michael. And I do want to end with thanking Hanalea and Rebecca for leading us in this session. Great job. Good job, guys. Give them a hand, virtually or otherwise. So thanks again for doing that. A preview of coming attractions by special arrangement next month. We are going to have a special session offered to us by our partners in Raleigh at the Wake Partnership to End and Prevent Homelessness. We're going to have a senior associate with WARCode who has done some training for the Raleigh Wake Partnership. We're going to use one of the trainings they've recently done on housing focused case management, and I previewed it, and it's going to, I think, work well to help us build on the skills we've talked about today, as well as other skills that we've explored in our monthly series. I think it's going to be a great session for case managers throughout our system, from street outreach through coordinated entry, through shelters, as well as rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. So I really encourage everyone to plan to participate in that session on October 15th. Should be a great session. I think it's a very practical session that I believe people will get a lot from. So thanks so much for staying over. Thanks for participating today. Again, thanks to Hanalea and Rebecca for leading us. Thanks to Ruby for being our technical guru and providing that support. We really value that as well. Have a great day and enjoy the weekend, everybody. Take care.
Have a good weekend.
You too.